The weight of forgotten knowledge. When I first plunged into the depths of my obsession, my family's laughter echoed in my ears like the tolling of a death knell. "You'll lose your mind, you know," my brother sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "What's next? Chasing ghosts in the dark?" My mother's eyes were full of concern, but it felt more like pity. They couldn't see the truth I had stumbled upon. The truth that led me to study cursed relics tied to plagues of old. They saw only a fool chasing phantoms. I was an epidemiologist, once celebrated for my work, until the outbreak, an inexplicable disease that swept through our city like a wraith. The blame fell squarely on my shoulders. I was the scapegoat for a system that failed. The ridicule from my colleagues was unbearable, but it was the betrayal from my family that shattered me. Their laughter echoed in my head as I turned away from their world, seeking refuge in the dark corners of history and the secrets hidden within cursed artifacts. Years passed, and I delved deeper into studies that others dismissed as superstition. I found myself in shadows, unearthing relics from ancient plagues, artifacts steeped in folklore, each one more grotesque than the last. I haunted forgotten libraries and scoured musty archives, driven by an obsession that consumed me. I learned of the plague doctor's masks, designed to protect against the unseen miasmas of disease, and of the cursed amulets, believed to harbor the spirits of the dead. I wasn't just studying these horrors. I was becoming one with them. I discovered how these objects held a power that went beyond mere superstition. As I unearthed truths that terrified the world, truths about the cyclical nature of plagues, the way these artifacts seemed to harbor the very essence of disease, I gained a certain notoriety. I became a cautionary tale, a reminder of what happens when curiosity drives one to explore the forbidden. My family, who once mocked me, would learn of my success through news outlets, their disdain replaced with the faintest hints of fear. I was no longer their disgrace. I had become a warning. After years of isolation, I returned home. The house felt foreign, as if it had been exiled from my memories. The walls were lined with family photos, happy moments that felt like echoes of a life I had lost. My heart raced as I stepped inside, the air thick with unspoken words. My family stood in the living room, their expressions a mix of surprise and unease. They looked older, wearier, yet their gaze was sharp, piercing, as if they could see the darkness I carried within me. "Is it true?" my mother asked, her voice trembling. "You've become someone else." I nodded, my throat tight. "I've uncovered things you wouldn't believe." My brother took a step back, eyes narrowing, as if he were trying to see through the veil of my words. "You're not still on about those ridiculous relics, are you? You've gone mad." A chill crept through the room, and I felt the weight of their disbelief like a shroud. "You don't understand," I said, urgency bleeding into my tone. "These artifacts are more than mere objects. They're conduits for the horrors that plague humanity. They can unleash what should remain buried." My words hung in the air, heavy with the burden of truth. But they laughed again, a nervous chuckle that cut through me like a knife. It was the same laughter I had heard years before, a sound that had once driven me into the shadows. "You're just trying to scare us," my brother said, dismissing me with a wave of his hand. That's what I felt, an unnatural chill that seeped into the room. The shadows seemed to stretch, dark tendrils creeping into the corners of their well-lit home. I could sense it. The air thickened, swirling with an energy that made my skin crawl. I had brought something with me, not merely knowledge, but a presence that had nestled itself deep within me, waiting for the right moment to emerge. "Look," I urged, pointing to the center of the room. "You need to see." And then it happened. The lights flickered, plunging us into darkness for a fleeting moment. When they came back on, a figure loomed in the corner, an amalgamation of shadows twisting into a grotesque form. It wore a mask, the kind of mask that plague doctors had worn centuries ago, its beak-like nose elongating into a haunting silhouette. The room filled with a presence that radiated power and despair, a relic brought to life by my words and the weight of my studies. My family's laughter turned to screams, their eyes wide with terror as they stumbled back, colliding with the walls. "What is that?" my mother cried, her voice a fragile whisper. "Please make it go away." "I can't," I shouted, the truth crashing over me like a tidal wave. "This is what I've been trying to warn you about. This is the cost of ignorance." The figure swirled around them, a living embodiment of the plagues I had studied. It whispered in a language older than time, a cacophony of despair echoing through the room. The shadows danced, consuming their laughter, the mocking words they had hurled at me, now trapped in the darkness. I watched, heart pounding, as they realized too late the consequences of their disbelief. I had become the bearer of knowledge they thought was trivial, a pawn of the darkness they had dismissed. They were witnesses to the horrors I had unearthed, and it was as if the very fabric of their reality was unraveling before their eyes. As the figure drew closer, I felt a sense of calm wash over me, an acceptance of what I had become. This was my triumph. I had survived the shadows, and now they would bear witness to my haunting truth. My family was trapped in a moment of reckoning, and I was finally vindicated. When the figure receded into the darkness, leaving my family trembling and gasping for breath, I whispered, "You see? You see what you mocked?" They stared at me, their faces pale, horror etched into their features. They had wanted to believe I was mad, but now they understood the weight of my knowledge. I had emerged from the darkness, carrying the burden of truths they had shunned. As I stepped out of their home, the laughter of my family echoed in my mind, but this time it was different. It was laced with fear, a realization of what they had lost in their disbelief. I had transformed from their disgrace into a harbinger of truth, and the shadows that accompanied me were not merely relics of the past. They were reminders of a future they could no longer ignore.